Welcome to Go Home Heat, a special event podcast. And this one is about NXT's War Games. War Pigs. Generals gathered in the masset. Dun 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 dun.
This whole podcast is just me singing.
Got to hear that 32 times in the last 6 hours.
And I'm saying that if
is awesome.
I'm saying if they just played that whole song during the entire final match, it was already a great match, would have been elevated beyond the sound.
We did come up with the idea of rather than piping in crowd noise,
we just do War Pigs.
just play War Pigs in the background,
Straight. Can I just
with the fire and the helmet and the skull
Can I
and
just say
the tank
something?
riding along the top of them outside.
Can they please stop piping in "This is awesome" chants?
The one thing I'll say is that they do have a live crowd there, and it's going to be that they started and then they they're saying up it.
Yeah, but it
Because
still feels super forced.
It feels weird because they're still piped in at least applause, but I don't know if "This is awesome" comes from the crowd or if they're piped. They used to definitely but I don't know.
At least they're piping in crowd noise to substitute for there not being a crowd.
Honestly,
we should have War Pigs. We should have one.
Okay, so let's move on to the.
Can I just say this?
Yeah.
War Pigs was probably my favorite part of this pay-per-view.
Yeah, I have a feeling that you watched a completely different.
I don't.
That's all right. Though we'll get into it.
Pay-per-view kind of.
That
was great.
A little.
Okay, that's cool.
I've seen a lot of wrestling, and this is probably my favorite pay-per-view I've seen this year.
There you go. It's people.
That's my thought.
Completely politicians of the world, completely reasonable people can sit and watch the same thing.
I am telling you though,
see
I do have a knife
something
under the
totally
table.
different, and think differently about it, talk about it, and move on to something else, and not be mad at one another.
It's crazy.
It can happen, just not in DC. Okay, Poison Pixie, Candice LeRae's team comes out, and Gonzalez, Dakota Kai. You guys know who all's in this match. Tony Storm. Dakota Kai starts the match. Moon, Rhea, Io, Shotzi come out and
fire a shot at the guy before
I forgot.
the game
Shotzi
even
had her
starts.
self-made tank that she made herself. We watched her do it. Elvis's belt buckle taking care of business on the front. TCB with a Nerf missile that she fired at Dakota to initiate the War Games. To start with, tank. Let's go. Ember Moon heads to the ring first. She stops Shotzi and says, I'll take care of this. We get a great little first segment, or I thought it was a great little first segment of these two wrestling with one another. Man, it just, so much has happened. It's hard for me to focus right now. I'm trying to
I'm trying to figure out the right words.
Dakota had a nice spot where it was, I think you said she calls it the chiropractor. It's some form of a sunset flip into a backstabber.
Yeah.
And it is nice move. Shotzi enters with a toolbox and crowbar, and then we get Raquel Gonzalez, she was. I would say that the MVPs of this match were Io, and we'll get to why later, and Dakota. But I would also say that Raquel wound up being the star of the match the way they decided it should be done. She imposes her will and physicality on all of them till someone her size gets their Rhea, and it becomes a little bit of a fight. A hoss fight back and forth. Now, Rhea does use a mallet, which I don't believe was real because she swung and hit Dakota with it and did not kill her. So I'm assuming it was not a real mallet. Tony runs down. Kendo sticks enter the contest. Cool spot. Rio takes her belt off, wraps it around Dakota's waist, and headbutts her multiple times by yanking her into her. That was pretty cool. I haven't seen that. And you could literally do that in any match. Like, Cody could break that out with his weight belt spots if you wanted to.
Come on,
right.
Cody. Come on.
Right.
Right after that, I believe... Who's next?
We get the spots where eventually this winds up with Io trying to get into the ring, and they don't want to let her in the ring so they can keep their one-man advantage. She slides ladders into the ring to utilize during the match. She throws chairs in there to utilize during the match. They continue to close the door on her. Eventually, her time runs out. She hasn't gotten into the ring. Candice runs down, and Andy Hartman interferes here.
She keeps Io from going in, basically.
Right, and allows Candice to get to jump on her. Io gets knocked down. Candice gets into the ring, closes the door, and Candice believes that we've started the match. And so they utilize their advantage here, 4-on-3, and Candice winds up, and Candice winds up going for a pin, and that is when the referee says we can't start the match till all competitors have entered the ring, at which point they are fighting, and Io has climbed to the top of the ring, put a garbage can over her body, and dives onto all of them for your first spot of the, which these matches are
First
designed
of all,
for somewhat
about that spot,
fest.
which is great, but the image of just Io climbing all that structure from the outside, and with one hand, because in the other hand she has to have the garbage can.
Right.
Which
she's incredibly coordinated.
What?
Right. She
I was
carries.
like, oh, there's Io, and I see her slowly put on her Oscar the Grouch cosplay. I'm like, huh?
Right.
It's great, but it's just like, oh.
Yeah, it's so much crazy. These matches always have so much crazy. Storm Zero on a trash can. The spot where Dakota jumps from the top rope, that she's got Io wrapped in a trash can. Mm-hmm. Jumps from the top rope and crunches the trash can on top of her. It looked like she could have almost cut her stomach the way she
hit the side where she wasn't.
Yeah, the top of the trash can, but which was down by her belly. Right, that was crazy. Io manages over the course of this thing, and this is a brutal matchup. And I don't think they utilized all the toys great, but it was brutal. Mm-hmm. And these girls went after it. Now, Gonzalez slams Io through a ladder for the finish, but before that, Io had hit her finisher 4 times, her moonsault 4 different times, and not been able to get the pin on any of them because people pushed past her. Now, Gonzalez slams Io through a ladder and gets the pin, so it looks as if Gonzalez is going to wind up with a shot at the title somehow. Mm-hmm. With this win. What did we think about the match? What did we think about the finish? What do we think about a program with Gonzalez and Io Shirai?
Ray, you may go first.
It was alright. It was probably my favorite match on the pay-per-view. It did have some pretty cool spots. I did like the eclipse that was...
Oh my god, I left it out. Good call.
Eclipse
Great
on
call.
a chair. Ow!
That was probably my favorite spot of the match, just because it did look like...
Oof.
Dakota's
leaning over 2 chairs. Ember hits her flipping cutter eclipse move from the top rope, hits her own butt on the chair, breaks the chair with her butt. Looks like she breaks Dakota, but she probably doesn't. She probably took the worst bump of the 2. It was wonderful looking, right?
Yeah, it was my favorite spot of the match, maybe of the night. I don't... Yeah, you're going to have to refresh me on that.
We'll go through it all.
Decapitated.
Yes.
But there were some points where it kind of felt like there was too much happening and it felt a little crowded to the point where there was like, I couldn't really tell, or there was no like specific path because so much was going on.
Right, I get it.
I see that. I will say that I do agree with Ray on the fact that like the match's biggest detriment was the fact that it was a very, very busy match. But then again, most War Games matches I've seen have always just been a cluster of insanity. So that's just going to come with the territory. But that being said, does that negate the criticism? No. Because, like, I loved this match, like, also myself. I thought it was great. Shout out to Oscar Shirai, the Grouch.
Mm-hmm.
And the insanity. And as for where I think that's going to take what's her name? Raquel
Gonzalez.
Raquel Gonzalez against Io. It is an interesting thing to have her be the one to pin Io, and I have my own theory about what I think that means, because my one thing about Raquel is like she's great physically, she's intimidating. My worry is the fact that she is mainly Dakota's bodyguard, and like she has her own personality outside of that, but I think it would benefit her most if she were to be the one to really gun it for the championship and dethrone Io Shirai. You're going to have to break off those ties at some point, I feel like. Story-wise, that makes the most sense.
Right. Unless Dakota were to somehow be okay with being a manager type.
Which,
while she still wrestles.
Judging by her current trajectory, I don't think that her character would allow that.
She's a very good wrestler, right? So that would be strange. But the other thing here, and we've never seen that. It's not that it can't happen. It's just we've never seen it where Shawn Michaels is okay with Diesel being the world champ. You know what I mean? Or in the other company, MJF would not be okay with Wardlow being the champ, right?
He would be fine with Wardlow,
weird.
I'm fine with Wardlow or like Sammy winning because they would let me keep the ring. That's why they were there.
So, but now here's the thing: is I believe what we've seen with NXT, especially in this time period here, is they decided Shotzi is a big deal. Really on the basis of her performance, not in the ring, but on the basis of her performance at Halloween Havoc, where she just kind of carried the show.
Yeah.
They said, this woman's a star, we'll figure it out. And they put her in situations where she could excel, and she has done so. She's been great since then. Raquel, I feel like they said, we have these two really large, strong, athletic women in Raquel Gonzalez and Rhea Ripley. And that match was so good, I believe, and nobody's told me this, I just am thinking about what I'm seeing booking wise. I believe that Rhea Ripley made Raquel Gonzalez look like a legitimate competitor to the throne. And they have decided maybe not let her win, but she's the right heel for the job in the next big showdown, right?
Yeah.
And I think they're 100% right, because Raquel has shown, and they... When the match started, I said, how do we get the belt off Io to us in the room if we're going to do that at some point, which at some point you have to, right? I said, a couple of things. Then I said, well, maybe Raquel, but she hasn't really shown us. By the time this match was over, you believed she could be the world champ.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty good job to do when you weren't thinking that was really a thing at the beginning of the match. That's a pretty good story to tell over the course of
this is
a match, right? Now, the next thing we have is...